Satisfactory Early Access is worth the $30 price tag. This is a positive review. Satisfactory is a factory building, survival style game with some mystery and rewarding exploration elements. The premise is that you're on a mission for the Fix-It Corporation, landing on an alien planet where you're encouraged to harvest local resources to build a large automated factory. Most of the game is focused around the building and optimization of your factory, and has a well-integrated milestone system that guides you and encourages you to advance. Outside of the base building, as you explore the world, you begin to learn there's a bit more to the planet than you'd immediately expect. So, who should buy this game and for how much? Personally, I might be willing to pay up to $35 for this game, but $40 would definitely be overpriced. If you loved Factorio, Oxygen Not Included, or dare I say Subnautica, buy it as soon as it releases. You won't regret it. If you don't like base building or automation and process-based games, consider waiting for the game to develop some or possibly go on sale. I think most fans of survival-based games would be happy to pay $30 for this game, or up to $20 if they didn't like Factorio or Oni, although I think Subnautica fans will be happy to pay more. If you're more of a fan of action or fighting-based games, and you don't like slower-paced building games, Satisfactory probably isn't for you. That's your bottom line up front. Stick around if you'd like a more detailed review. BLUF Gaming here with my very first game review. Those of you who have been with my channel for a while know I typically only make tutorial videos, but I decided to apply the idea of BLUF to game reviews, and this is my first shot at it. I'm putting my final verdict for the game as the very first sentence, along with whether or not I think the game is worth the price tag. Then I give an immediate description and some context for who might or might not enjoy the game before moving on to the detailed review, which would come right now. I'm not being paid by Coffee Stain, Epic, or anyone else to make this review. This has been something I wanted to incorporate into this channel for some time, and Satisfactory just happens to be the first one where I did it. Please let me know what you think of the format, as I'm open to any change that gets you the information you want faster. Now, enough of my rambling about the channel, and let's jump into the detailed review. First off, the game is beautiful with graphics that hit far above the quality you'd expect from a studio the size of Coffee Stain. The animations for structures are wonderful, and I was particularly struck by their detail when I initially placed the portable miner, and again by the space elevator. I only had access to one of the starting maps when I was making this review, but it was lush, beautiful, and alien in appearance without feeling too foreign. Generally speaking, the rendering and draw distances are impressive. However, I did encounter a few instances where the graphics could be better, such as when distant graphics displayed at a much lower frame rate than nearer ones. Now let's talk a bit about the gameplay and design. It goes without saying that this game takes a ton of inspiration from Factorio, and that's not a bad thing. I've been saying for years that I wanted to play a first-person perspective Factorio, and Satisfactory gives us just that. Surprisingly though, while exploring the world, I found there's a bit of mystery in Satisfactory as well. Perhaps not as much mystery as Subnautica, but I feel certain they took a bit of inspiration from that game as well. I was unable to play the end game of Satisfactory, for reasons I'll mention later, but in the early to mid game, I found the threats from native wildlife only slightly challenging. But it's obvious their threat increases as you explore farther from your landing site, to the point that a starting player definitely can't handle jumping straight into the more mysterious parts of the game. The threats in the game are more similar to Subnautica than Factorio. They exist, and it's exploration that exposes you to them, not like Factorio where it's the building of your factory that induces danger. Even with me only having access to the early and mid game, it's easy to see this game has tons of replayability and single player value. As I've been under an NDA, I wasn't able to test the multiplayer capabilities of the game, but I did find myself wishing I had help in building some of the more ambitious projects, and it's easy to tell that multiplayer, if it runs smoothly, will be a very rewarding game mode. Even so, the single player game mode alone is worth the $30 price tag. I got hundreds of hours of rewarding gameplay from Factorio as a single player game, and I expect I will have the same from Satisfactory. A bit of a neutral point about the game progression is that there are points in the game that feel a bit like a waiting game. Game progression is largely guided and controlled through a multi-tiered milestone system that works in a lot of ways like a tech research tree in other survival games. The waiting aspect that I take issue with surfaces because until you get Tier 3 coal power, you're primarily limited by the amount of electricity you have available to you. Even once you get to Tier 1 and you can build biomass generators, fueling those generators requires tedious manual gathering, so you're fairly limited at that point in how large of a factory you can build, and thus limited in how quickly you can supply the hub with milestone requirements you need to complete to advance the game. The result is that you're either stuck twiddling your thumbs between some milestones, or you're forced to manually build items for the milestone requirements just so you can progress in the game. Initially, I thought this would be a negative point for my review of this game, but that was before I went out exploring. Exploration in this game is interesting, rewarding, and surprisingly full of mystery. Once I realized that, I was no longer bothered so much by waiting between milestones, as I could let my factory work on the next milestone while I was out in the world exploring and discovering. I do have a few negative things to note about the game design. One is that, at least in the early to mid game, there are far too few uses for copper. Managing and integrating multiple resources is one of the most rewarding aspects of games like Factorio and Oxygen Not Included. And I feel like Coffee Stain missed their opportunity to have that integrated in the early game. As it stands, at least for tiers 0 through 3, all you have to do with copper is set up a few machines to mine and process copper into wires and dump them in a box. Even on a poor copper deposit, this gives you more than enough wires, and it requires no maintenance at all, just power. I guess you could also automate some of the wires being converted into cables, but you use so few cables that it's honestly not worth the effort. Another negative aspect of the game I find is your carrying capacity. It's too big. Sure, I regularly find myself wishing for more slots to carry items with, but more slots come quickly as you advance through the milestones, and you get storage containers early on that make managing your inventory easy. The issue I have is that you can easily carry more than 1,000 pieces of concrete and use that to build impossible bridges that overcome nearly any terrain obstacle. The world is full of mountains, ravines, and pillars that protect various rewards and mysteries of this alien world, and all you have to do is build an ugly Minecraft-esque bridge or ramp that could never exist in the real world to get wherever you want to go. Perhaps incorporating some sort of weight limit for heavier items such as concrete could help address this, or perhaps something not related to inventory at all, such as not letting you build a stupid stick of a foundation way out over no supports whatsoever that somehow miraculously can hold up against all the forces of physics. Regarding the user interface, Satisfactory generally did a good job. The placement of structures, conveyor belts, and the like is easy and natural, as is controlling your character in general. The distance at which you can place objects is impressive, and while it might not feel realistic out of context, when you see the individual components for the object you're placing at a distance sail out of your inventory off into the distance to build the structure, you feel satisfied with the mechanism for building far away. Where this is particularly helpful is the placement of power lines, which is a bit of a fumbling point for Factorio's UI, and a place where Satisfactory excels. While I haven't seen if there are trains in Satisfactory, you do have vehicles which are both easy to control and can also fill the role of trains with their own version of automated mass transport. The tractor, your first vehicle in Satisfactory, has an easy to understand path recording feature that enables you to set a path for the vehicle to traverse, and from there it repeatedly executes that path, picking up and dropping off items as you determine. It's rare, but you can get stuck walking around in the world, and sometimes in areas that don't make a lot of sense, such as a bunch of bushes that you just walked into naturally, but then were completely unable to escape. They did incorporate a suicide option that lets you respawn back at base, but unfortunately that leaves all of your inventory back in the offending area where you were originally stuck, and you just have to hope that poor design doesn't end up costing you a lot of work. The controls for the game are generally good, but some of them could use a bit of work. There's a parachute, for instance, in the game that seems to have 5 uses, but once you equip it, it's easy to find that it has been completely used up long before you get a chance to use it because you accidentally clicked right-click too many times while walking around generally. Also, while you can assign blueprints to hotkeys for easy building, there doesn't seem to be a way to assign your tools to hotkeys, so manually switching tools out can feel tedious and flat out dangerous when you're exploring in the wild with your object scanner out while worried about aggressive wildlife attacking you when you have no weapons equipped. It's possible that there's a way to assign tools to hotkeys, but even if that's so, the developers need to do a better job explaining that in-game so people know how to do it. Initially, I thought I'd be reporting a major bug where Tier 4 milestones couldn't be completed, but the devs later changed my review copy to indicate that the later tiers of progression aren't available in this alpha. When the game enters early access on the 19th though, the first 6 tiers of milestones will be available, with more being added as development continues. In my early access copy, I was able to see there are at least 8 tiers of progression planned. True bugs are few and far between, but some do exist, such as notification markers on your hub if you rebuild it, and occasionally some of these bugs can impact your gameplay, such as aggressive creatures continuing to make sounds for several seconds after they've been defeated, making you continue to act in a defensive manner while you search for threats that don't actually exist. However, this is an early access game, and nobody should expect early access games to be bug-free. Nobody is forced to buy an early access game, and in doing so, I believe, the player and developers enter an unspoken agreement where we players must have a higher tolerance for errors in exchange for the developer's promise to continue developing the game and address known issues quickly. Finally, let's talk about what I believe will be the biggest complaint about Satisfactory: the Epic Game Launcher. The game was initially listed on Steam, and Coffee Stain still has games on Steam today, so a lot of fans of Steam were upset when they saw Satisfactory removed from Steam. Why did they do it? Well, you can check out their channel and watch a good video telling you why, but the main reason, I suppose, was money. Epic paid them to be exclusive on their launcher, and Jace has said their revenue share is better for them than Steam anyway. The exclusivity agreement is for 12 months, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it on Steam 1 year from now. Personally, I'm not upset with them making this move. I've been quite upset about exclusivity deals on consoles and on PCs in the past, such as Xbox versus PlayStation, or when Oculus was paying devs not to release games for the HTC Vive. However, this deal just affects where you buy the game, not what type of computer or console you play on. If I were a shirt designer that tons of people loved and Target told me they'd give me more money per shirt if I've sold my shirt only with them for a year, sure, I'd be tempted. If they further said they'd help me pay to build a new sweatshop, a new shirt factory, I'd probably agree. After all, I can always sell my shirts at Walmart a year from now if I want, and it's not like these are the final shirts, they're just prototypes of shirts. My shirts haven't even reached their final form. All in all, I've loved the time I've spent this week playing Satisfactory, and I look forward to continuing to play it once it's available on March 19th. Coffee Stain has a huge release on their hands, and I couldn't be happier for them. I love the way they engage their community, and this game is filling a void that a lot of people didn't realize that existed between Factorio, Subnautica, and maybe even Space Engineers. So that's it for my very first game review. Subscribe if you'd like to see my future videos dealing with Satisfactory and other games that I make tutorials for, and I look forward to reading what you think about the game and my review style in the comments. Thanks for watching Bottom Line Up Front, and I'll see you next time.